Afternoon all, Barry Harding-Rathbone here. Welcome to SpiritShackTV and welcome again to our occasional mini-series on the 7 principles of modern spiritualism. Number 2, the Brotherhood of Man. I must apologise, there's a big wasp floating around the lounge, so if I jerk suddenly, I'm not very fond of wasps, so I apologise. Also apologise for the state of my face. I've had very little sleep again. You will recall from the still at the end of the first principles episode, the Fatherhood of God, where it talks about the Brotherhood of Man. Now remember, at the time, the spirit of Robert Owens, the founder of the Co-operative Movement, delivered the 7 principles through the mediumship of Mrs Emma Hardinge-Brittan. The people in Victorian times lived in a very paternalistic society. Women indeed had very few rights. They certainly couldn't vote. Divorce wasn't considered a possibility, and in fact in most cases, apart from in the most enlightened households, women were seen still as chattels or belongings to their husbands or fathers. I'm very glad to say that's not the case these days in the 21st century. So I personally think that a more appropriate phrasing of that second principle in 2016 would be something on the lines of the community of all living souls. Be that people who live on this side of life, the physical side of life that you and I inhabit at the time, or those in the spirit world, from whence we came and to whence we'll ultimately return. You know, I am old enough, I know I don't look it, but nearing 50, I can remember a time when community meant just that, when we would look after our neighbours and our friends and keep an eye on them, especially the elderly and the infirm. I well remember my grandmother and my mother often sending me next door in the house we lived at in the Midlands to a lovely spinster lady who lived there called Miss Jessie Bishop, who I have very fond memories of and have heard from in spirit on numerous occasions, just to check that she was okay, because she lived one of those sort of slightly crazy cat women lives, and you never knew from one minute to the next whether she'd be shinnying up a very tall and unsteady ladder to change a light bulb, or she'd be laid out on the floor because she collapsed again because of her COPD. But we kept an eye on each other. We on her. She in turn used to babysit my sister and I, and she'd take my grandmother out with gay abandon for trips into Leamington Spa shopping and having cups of tea and cake in the pump rooms and doing the things that ladies of a certain age enjoy doing. But we knew how she was, and we knew her by name. Now, whether it's by our own fault or whether it's because of our neighbours, I can't say, but John and I, for example, have lived in our bungalow here in Bournemouth now for just over 14 months. And in that time, we've got to know one family who don't actually live on our road. They live in the road at the end of ours, off the T-junction, and we know them by name and have a good friends relationship with them, and we all look after each other. We live in a semi-detached bungalow. We have met and spoken to the elderly lady and gentleman who live next door over the fence and once at the front door. We don't know each other's names, and we barely nod to recognise each other. And we know a couple of people further down the road by sight who, out of habit, will wave to us as we go past in the car and we return the favour. But in this 21st century rush that we live in, with so much technology at hand, with so many things that we all have to cram into our day, our working life is so stressed, those of us who are blessed enough to have a job these days, and our time is very precious. I guarantee, though, if you look at your television, satellite or wireless router thingamajiggy that's attached to it from one of the numerous suppliers of TV services, if you look in the planner, I guarantee that most of you, like us, will have a fair few weeks of things backed up. In our case, it's usually documentaries and nature programs or interesting things on the news, and my love of bargain hunt and flog it, because I am an antiques freak. I bet you've got loads too, and I guarantee that the majority of people will have at least 3 or 4 weeks of the collective sum of their entertainment being the soap operas, or the quiz shows, or Judge Rinder, or Jeremy Kyle. Yes, we're guilty of that one too. But I know people who set their clock and set their social time by how many episodes of EastEnders they have to catch up on, because they couldn't possibly miss one episode, because if they did, God help them, they might die. And because we're so rushed, because our time is so precious, it's all too often for us, too easy to forget about those who live immediately around us, and that includes our families. I'm very privileged as a medium to speak to some wonderful people in the churches, community halls, theatres and public venues that I work in, both in this country and overseas, particularly in Malta. Although Malta's a slightly unique situation because there is a great sense of community still in that wonderful little island country. But I think that's something that we share with them to a degree because we are island nations. Each one of them, though, if I ask them the question, what does the Brotherhood of Man mean to them, most of them come up with the same answer, what I'm talking about now. Community, togetherness, looking after each other and helping each other when needs arise, and being aware of our surroundings and of the people we meet. You know, I said that we are on nodding terms or waving as we pass by some of our neighbours on our road. Some of them are of a certain age where I pretty strongly guarantee that on most days we're the only people that lady or that lady and gentleman or the other gentleman might see. And our neighbours attached to us are just the same. They go from day after day after day with nobody knocking at their door. We hear their phone ring maybe once a fortnight, and it's usually a long call, and we happen to know it's from one of their children. We need to start spending time, especially when there's so much horror and the atrocities of daily living in 21st century planet Earth are going on, such as they are. I think immediately of the barbaric situation of children and innocent people being carpet bombed in Aleppo, in a city that they can't escape from. I feel for the people who were killed in the gay club in Orlando. I feel for the people injured in the pipe bomb attack in New Jersey. And I feel for those huge numbers in inner city and urban areas where they have no sense of community at all. Yet I also rejoice every time I see an article on the news, particularly the local news, when it's something that's specific to my area, where such and such has taken place and a group have got together to campaign for this, or to have a street party, or to celebrate a particular person in their community who deserves their recognition. Because it harks me back to days when there was more of a sense of community, when there was that time spare that we could give to one another without worrying about what we're going to miss or who we might upset by taking an extra 30 seconds as we go past just to say hi. Even to the simplest things, such as when you're in the supermarket or the store and the checkout girl or boy looks so miserable, they're probably on basic minimum wage, they hate their job, they really wish they were doing something better with their lives, but they try to force a smile because that's what their bosses are telling them to do, because the customer's always right. If they have a name badge, I always try and use it. I always say please, and I always say thank you, because it's how I was brought up, and I'm sure you were brought up the same. So let's take that second principle into our hearts, and along with that divine energy or essence that we talked about in the previous episode, let's start to live as a community once again. The Brotherhood of Man, a community of all living souls. You don't have to save all your kisses for me if that's what you thought I was going to talk about. I'm not a retrograde Eurovision know all, although I should be, of course. I'm a gay man. There's another stereotype that we can block. Maybe not kisses, but let's save a little time for one another and bring back that sense of community. Until we meet again, God bless you and namaste. And as always, if you've liked what you've seen, please tick the appropriate button. Please leave a constructive comment or a criticism. Don't mind criticism as long as it's constructive and we can have a debate. You never know, you may change my opinion. Share this if you feel it worth sharing, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. And until we meet again, may your God and my God go with us all. God bless.